And now, it's Boomer Life, lifestyle discussion designed to make your life more engaging, meaningful, and complete. Celebrating the baby boomer generation, this is Boomer Life on CIL 650.
Well, hello and welcome to Boomer Life here on CIL 650. Sterling Fox with you. Nice to have you along with us. As the opening theme song suggests, the subject of the hour's discussion is money, specifically money problems, even more pointedly, debt problems. If you have excessive debt, you don't always have to feel overwhelmed and isolated. There is hope. There is freedom from debt. There is always a solution. Joining us in studio today is Brett Luckett, trustee in bankruptcy and vice president at Abacan and Associates with offices all over BC. Nice to see you again, Brett.
Hello, Sterling. Yes, good to see you as well.
5 offices in BC, Vancouver, Surrey, Victoria, Prince George, and Vernon up there in the Okanagan. And you, being perhaps British Columbia's most traveled trustee, literally work out of all 5 offices, don't you?
Certainly probably one of the more traveled trustees in BC, yes. I think that is completely true.
But you have an attitude that I think is most refreshing for a lot of people, because you are a helpful kind of guy whose mission it is to offer hope to people with serious money problems. So for you to jump on a plane or jump in the car and go blitz off to see somebody is what you do.
Yeah.
You don't insist that people drive a half a day to come and see you in your cushy Vancouver office.
No, if I can possibly help it, we try as a company, we try to set things up so that if it's possible, we'll come to see you. As an example, I deal with the Okanagan area a lot. And rather than just fly into somewhere like Kelowna, what I tend to do 90% of the time is drive, which then gives me the alternative or the option of being able to go through, say, Penticton, Princeton, Kamloops on the way back. I've even gone up as far as 100 Mile House or Williams Lake, just literally as part of that travel route to meet people who really need to sit down with someone and because many people want to see you face to face. Telephone works fine as a method of imparting and sort of analyzing information, but ultimately when you deal with stuff like this, there are many people that want to meet you face to face.
I would think so, Brett, and I would think that in some cases these people who call you up and request a face-to-face meeting have taken some considerable time working up the courage in some cases to just make that simple phone call.
Yeah, there's an enormous amount of stress associated with this. Many people who I see or who come to see us have spent a significant amount of time on the one hand, closing their eyes to the reality that debt has got more than they can handle.
Right.
But even though their eyes are closed, their heart and their brain knows there's a problem.
Sure.
And so as a result of that, there's an enormous amount of stress associated with it. And I know we were looking at some facts and figures in terms of how stress, specifically in terms of debt, affects people's health. And it's remarkable how much sicker you can make yourself by not resolving the problem, but allowing the issues to sort of percolate over time.
And that's absolutely true, because it begins as a psychological issue. I am in a financial pickle. People are writing me nasty letters. They're making phone calls. Everybody's angry at me. And so that's where it starts to percolate, to use your word.
That's right.
But then the less you do about it, and the more the aggravation level increases, the more likely that percolation is going to not end well. And Brett was just talking a moment ago about having a look at it, because we were presented a few minutes ago, just before we went on, with this interesting AOL survey from the people at AOL. And they talked about some health issues that come out of being in debt. In other words, they did a survey of people who, for example, who have ulcers or other digestive tract issues. And they asked them, well, are you an indebted person? And of people who were, 27% had all of those digestive issues. People who weren't in debt, only 8% of those people, Brett, had other digestive and ulcers. Ulcers, most commonly, an anxiety disorder, isn't it?
Yes.
You're just so worked up, nothing will ever settle down. I mean, pull a couple others out here. 29% suffering severe anxiety due to debt problems. People without debt problems, Only 4% of that group suffering from the same level of anxiety disorders. And one more, just because, well, this one, 6% reporting heart attacks, for crying out loud, Brett, double the rate for those with low debt stress. So despite the fact that it is a material and eventually psychological problem, being in debt can make you sick, can make you unwell.
Oh, I see it constantly. I mean, people come into our office, and very often the meeting with someone like myself or another trustee is the end of a line of an enormous amount of stress.
Right.
And of course that results in tears and a lot of sort of, flailing of their back. What is that? There's that phrase where you see people beating their backs with cat o' nine tails or something.
Right.
There's a lot of that. I'm such an idiot. I'm such a fool. I can't believe I did this to myself. A lot of crying, etc. And really, it is because it's at the end of a long road of either closing your eyes to it completely, or alternatively, just simply not finding a solution to the problem.
When people start to become physically ill, Brett, as a result of all of this debt stress, is that for some the trigger where maybe the spouse or their partner says, look, this is really, really starting to harm you. You really do need to take action.
Unfortunately, it's not, actually. Generally speaking, the only reason why people will come and see us, other than those who are being proactive, and we do meet a number of those people as well.
They can feel it slipping away, and they decide, let's get in there and find out how to deal with it before it goes.
I just spoke to a guy just the other day who, in fact, has not yet defaulted on any payments whatsoever. But him and his wife actually sat down and came to a decision in their mind that they knew this was going to come apart in the next couple of months. They just sat down, did their budget, and they figured out they can't make this float anymore.
Right.
This boat's going to sink soon. And then he phoned. But by and large, the reason why most people will come and see us is because of a triggering factor such as a foreclosure, court action by a creditor, garnishment of wages, a bunch of really rude letters, or alternatively sort of the hounding by the credit collection caller, right? At 10 o'clock at night, somebody's phoning you, or at 6 o'clock in the morning, because of course they into the call center on the East Coast already, when you barely have got out of bed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you get the call at 6 a.m. in the morning or something. It's those sorts of triggering issues which tend to bring people into our office. I think often people don't realize that there is a very direct correlation with how ill they feel and how much stress they're under.
But part of this long process of coming to you involves a certain deliberate period of procrastination. So typically, aside from those people, as you just described, the husband and wife who decided, whoa, this is starting to slip away. We haven't missed any payments yet, but oh, brother, this isn't going to end well. So let's get in there and talk to somebody who can help us do something about it. Most people wait, and most people procrastinate. Well, not only do they wait, Brett, they deliberately wait for, in some cases, quite long periods of time.
Yeah, there's the not open the envelope a trick, where I'll just pretend it's not a problem, because by not opening any of the envelopes I know I owe money to, I think I'm solving the problem.
Well, as long as I put that on ignore.
Or if I just simply, anything that's a 1-800, 1866, 1877 or 18 something number, I will just never answer those phone calls, right? Because I know that's a collector calling me.
Right.
But of course, by doing that, what you do is you put yourself into an even darker place, because you have no idea what action those people are intending in the future.
Right.
Is there going to be a court action? Is there going to be some sort of garnishment order requested in a foreclosure process, or when am I going to get told to get kicked out of my house?
Right.
And the solution to that is not to simply not answer the phone or not open the envelopes, because that's the way you're going to find.
Well, I was just going to say, if you're going to be foreclosed upon, or some other your car is going to be taken away because of lack of payments or something like that, all of those people are required by law to send you notification that unless a certain amount of payment is made, we're going to reclaim that vehicle, or we're going to foreclose that house. And if you're just sitting there taking any official-looking envelope that comes through the mail slot and going, well, I'll just put that one in the big ignore basket because I know what they're saying. They're saying we owe them money. Well, then you're missing an opportunity to react, Brett, in the case of a foreclosure.
Yeah,
I mean, if you don't open it, you don't know what's going to happen.
And truthfully, all you're doing is elevating your own stress.
Right.
And when situations like that occur, and the best thing to do is first of all, get yourself in the know, understand the reality of your situation, and then call a professional like us so that we can, in fact, go through your situation with you and explain to you why it's actually not as awful as you might think it is. There are some practical realities about insolvency, about being unable to pay your debt back.
Right.
You can't get around those. But they are, generally speaking, by and large, never as bad as you think they are.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And with the procrastination, all of this putting it off, you've been around the block a few times. What's a typical period for an indebted person to understand that this isn't going to end well, but still not do anything about it? It's years. It does go years.
It's not weeks or months. It's years. We are talking, you look at tax debt, we are talking at people that will avoid filing their taxes for years.
Right.
And that's only because they missed once or twice, and now they know they're behind. Now they don't want to figure out how much they owe anymore. So what they'll do is
stop filing.
So they just stop filing. It is bizarre. I know the logic doesn't seem to make any sense, but it does in fact happen. And then they're 6 or 7 years behind, and then suddenly they go up on Canada Revenue Agency's radar, and bang, then it's garnishment, bank's account gets seized, and that's of course when they phone us.
Well, exactly. No, I was about to ask, what is the usual trigger that causes an indebted person or couple to contact you and your colleagues at Abakan and Associates, Brett? Is it a garnishment or some other formal notice like that that causes?
It's threat. It's the threat of a direct action, whether it be a garnishment or a seizure of bank account. Very often those are the kind of triggers where they'll phone, and of course that's the wrong way to deal with those sorts of issues. You should be trying to intercept that long before that kind of problem arises.
Right.
And in an ideal world, you would be like the man who phoned me last week and said, okay, I've sat down, I've done a budget with my wife, and I know this is not going to end well if I don't think about doing something. Yeah, and that's in the ideal world, that's what you should be doing.
And what percentage of people who come to you and George and all your other colleagues at Abakan does that represent? The person or the couple who realizes, as you just said, this is not going to end well, but so far we've still got a handle on this. We can still make things happen, directing it ourselves. What percentage of those people represent your total business per year, given the fact that I suspect it's a rather large percentage of people who are bankrupt or really indebted?
Unfortunately, it's not as high a percentage as you would like. The kind of people that are proactive tend to be, I don't know if I want to say 10 or 15 or 20, but certainly less than half.
Okay.
Less than half of the people that come and see us are coming to see us proactively in an attempt to find a way to resolve their problems before it becomes an issue for them.
We need to take a break, Dwayne, signaling that we do, but you mentioned one thing before we started the program today, and I just wanted to explore what you meant by it. Because you said one of the reasons that a lot of people delay or procrastinate is fear of the unknown.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Bankruptcy, or insolvency generally, but the word bankruptcy holds a lot of dark, dastardly deeds. Trustees are going to remove your home.
Right.
And I still get that question. Am I going to lose my house? My car's going to get taken away from me? Will I have knives and forks? How many knives and forks are you going to leave me with?
Right.
Am I going to lose my pension? Is my pension protected? What about my municipal pension? Is that protected? How much do I have to pay you? There's all these questions which create an enormous amount of fear, because there's a myth out there that going bankrupt automatically means that you'll lose everything you own, and perhaps there was a lady who said to me the other day, well, I have to give my children away. Truthfully, she said that to me.
Good grief.
Do I have to put my children in foster care or something? It's just that kind of lack of understanding completely blows my mind, because of course it's complete nonsense.
Of course
it
is
true.
But if the popular myth, Brett, is if you go bankrupt, you are ruined. That's pretty widely held, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's why people are afraid to come to you.
The fear of the unknown.
It's like stepping off a cliff to them.
That's right. And instead, what I met a gentleman the other day when I was in my travels, who expressed to me that he was actually quite suicidal, because his life had not gone well, truthfully, up until the point he met me.
Right.
And he was quite suicidal. And I looked at him and I said to him quite bluntly, you've got to start looking at it that today is a new day. You've drawn a line in the sand, and everything happened before today is over. It's gone. You can't fix it. It's done.
Right.
However, by doing what you're doing today, this is how you can make your life better. So tend to see the meeting with me more as the bottom of a sort of a parabola, right? The bottom of the parabola, and now everything else from now on is on its way up. It's a better. And if you looked at meeting a trustee more from that perspective, a lot of the fear that you have would disappear.
So the meeting with the trustee should represent an opportunity to turn your life around.
That is a great way to say it.
Interesting. Yes. Well, as we mentioned at the very beginning of the program today, friends, if we're talking about solutions to debt problems, and there is always hope, and there is always a solution. Our guest in studio is Brett Lucken, a trustee in bankruptcy and vice president at Abacan and Associates in Vancouver and online. Vancouver, Surrey, Victoria, Vernon, and Prince George. And online, you can find them all on one spot at abacan.com, and that's ABAKHAN.com. Lots more ahead on Boomer Life. Stay with us.
Celebrating the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CL 650.